guys, welcome back to episode 6 of the Creepy Cascadia podcast. I'm Sammy here with my smoking hot husband co-host Adam.
Hey.
And for today's episode, we're actually going to be doing something a little different. We thought about doing a dark week, which means, no episode. This past weekend was my birthday. I had some friends up. It was a very busy weekend. Did some much needed self-care on Sunday, but we didn't want to leave you guys without something this week. So,
yeah, keep the ball rolling.
That's right. So this week we're going to actually kind of delve into a little bit of what led us to this point. And by this point, I mean the podcast. So kind of what inspired me to A, be super interested in true crime and the paranormal, and B, how I sucked you into it. So
me.
You, Adam.
I was like, the audience? You suck the audience?
That's the plan. Just don't listen to us backwards. You'll hear all our hidden messages.
Yeah, we're from our problem. It was like a thing. It was a thing for a while, like people talking backwards.
Chicago.
In like high school. No, like in the 90s. Like,
oh.
Because we had heard like, oh, records playing backwards, Satan.
Well, Missy Elliott had a, it's for get or whatever.
Yeah.
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 So she did that.
Yeah.
Don't know what it means forward, but I'm sure somebody does.
Hmm.
But yeah, so we kind of, and also just a little bit more of like get to know your hosts. We've kind of started, we've talked a little bit in our episodes about us, but we kind of just want to give you guys a better idea of who you're listening to. So we're going to delve deep into our psyches to see what makes us us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're also not putting the cats up for this episode, or we're going to try.
We're wildin', man. We're going off the cuff, loose, playing fast and loose with our episode tonight. Yeah. But it's more of a fun episode.
You might hear some doors creak. That's the cats just going in and out.
It's a ghost.
Yeah.
It's a
definitely not behind you. It's definitely not in your house.
Yeah. Sure.
It's in our house.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Keep it spooky by never using WD-40 on our doors.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of what we're doing tonight. We're also, this probably isn't going to be as long of an episode because we have birthday cake left over and we really want to go have a piece. So
yeah,
we may do that.
Yeah.
But we still, again, we wanted to bring you something, just a little, don't forget about us. We're still here. And I also kind of think it's fun to listen in and hear about the hosts of different shows. Like I love when they do episodes where they just kind of talk about themselves and why they're doing what they're doing. So
yeah.
Yeah. So how was your week? It's only Monday.
I mean, like, am I thinking about last week? I mean, like...
Sure, how was last week?
You mentioned you got to have fun birthday stuff. I got to go shop for comics.
You did.
I got, like, spent a little more than I had intended.
Hashtag story of our lives.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to spend that much, but...
Right? But we're okay, because we make enough money. Yeah.
I'm saying we, because it's not just him that does it. We both do. Get me in Home Goods, and it's like I black out and come out with a $300 receipt. Like, I don't even know what happened.
It's like, the stuff's in my car, but I'm not really sure what I bought. Like, it was a little bit of that. It was a little bit of like, I know I'm getting a good deal, so I'm buying this. You know? Mm-hmm. You fighting a yawn?
I did.
Fighting a yawn there?
I fought it.
The look on your face is pretty priceless there.
Is it like my O face?
No. Was your like, he's talking about comics face?
What?
Yeah.
No. No.
Yeah. But yeah, it was like, I was telling people today, I was like, first, I walked around the little expo thing, and then, like, I got, like, the last area I walked around was, like, the guy's, he was still setting up.
Okay.
And it was, like, an older guy.
Is this the guy with the Harry and the Hendersons?
Yes, this is the guy with the Harry and the Hendersons. So, like, I'm walking around, he has all, like, cards, like, baseball cards. I collect comics. He has all, like, cards, baseball cards. I round the table. I'm not really interested. I round the table, and he's got a box of Harry and the Henderson movie, like, trading cards. Like, if you remember I guess like just cards, baseball cards, trading cards were like such a thing in the 80s.
So, did baseball cards like used to have bubble gum in them?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Baseball cards used to have bubble gum. Like Garbage Pail Kids, like almost. I almost equate like anything that came in like a wax,
Like a pack.
like the wax sealed pack.
Mm-hmm.
Like yeah, usually had some form of like bubble gum. Like that became a thing at one point. There were some that didn't, but there was definitely the ones that did.
All the good ones did, obviously.
Yeah, and so then it was like.
For reference, Harry and the Hendersons is one of my favorite movies, and Adam found this at the comic expo and bought it for me on Saturday.
Yeah,
and it was really fucking awesome.
Yeah, I was looking for I was there. It was like I knew I wanted to get a commission of a local artist doing like a cartoony sketch of Jackson Winnie. Mm-hmm. That was priority number one.
Which was super cute. You did get one.
Yes, and I did get one. Shout out to the artist. I think it was like Becca. I think it's Rebecca, but Becca DePrisco, I think is.
We'll have to post it on our socials for people to see.
Maybe we'll have to post it on the socials.
Super cute.
I think I looked it up. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it's like I found a website that had an email address that matches the one that I sent like the pictures to for her to like draw off of. But yeah, so this guy had Harry and the Henderson. He had Little Shop of Horrors, which collect trading cards too.
Which the funny thing about Little Shop of Horrors, like I only just watched the movie like in the last 6 months because there's a Little Shop of Horrors casino game that is super fun to play. Although last few times I've played, all it does is take my money. So I'm done with it.
Yeah.
It sucked me in and then...
It was good for a while.
It was good for a while. I played, like that one time, I think a friend of mine and I went to the casino and I played on that thing for like 4 hours off of like $20.
Yeah.
And walked away with like $100. It was amazing. Yeah. And it's super fun because it's like loud and little things pop up on the screen. Like
they have little movie cutscenes.
Yeah, where you like win stuff and the bonuses and yeah.
And then like the plant grows, like you feed it wilds Seymour, or whatever. Yeah.
Or wait, no, Seymour's the guy.
Yeah, I forget the name of the alien plant.
Yeah. But I watched it and I'm like, this is a dirty, like, Steve Martin in that movie is like a fucking sadist. Like, I always forget how dirty, like, early 80s movies were.
Yeah.
And then you watch them and you're like, I swear I probably watched this as a kid. I probably should not have been watching this as a child. Like, I was not expecting that going into that movie. Not expecting that he was, like, A, abusive, and B, like, super, like, sadist of a sweet lady, which makes me sad. Like, if you want to have a sadomasochist relationship or whatever, as long as it's consensual, like, hey, you do you, man. But
that one was not.
That was not consensual. Harry and the Hendersons.
So Harry and the Hendersons cards, Little Shop of Horror cards. Mm-hmm. I was like, ooh, I should pick up a pack, see how much these are or whatever. So, like, he noticed me, like, looking, you know, and then he's like, he started asking me, he's like, hey, you know, what do you collect? What are you into? And I was like, comic books. And he's like, I got some in here. He's like, I just haven't put them out yet. And he's like, he's like, here, walk over here and I'll, like, put them out. And he's like, you can look through them first, you know.
Come into my shop and take a look.
No, I was more like, if there's a vendor who's like, I haven't put out my comics yet,
and I get first dibs
looking through them, like, that's the bee's knees.
That is the sweet spot.
That's the good stuff. Like the first look at the stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, like he pulls out like 90s Spider-Man holograms, of which I'm pretty sure I have like 4 or 5. You know, it was just like, I'm like, yeah, I got these already. Mm-hmm. Like, it was the 30th or 35th anniversary of Spider-Man. It was back in the 90s. Actually, one of those comics, my older brother bribed me with one of those comics. He like, it was like, my parents had bought concert tickets or something like that. And he like...
Was that for the Rolling Stones? Or like...
I don't know if it was for the Rolling Stones
I remember like...
Well, I mean, he really liked the Rolling Stones shirt.
That's what it was.
Yeah. When they did like the Big Lips tour or whatever. Mm-hmm. Back in the 80s.
Yeah.
It probably stemmed from like back when I was a kid. Like I wanted to go to Vanilla Ice concert, and we had 3 tickets, and my parents like made him. He wanted to take 2 friends, and he had to take me because I wanted to go also. So he had to choose which friend to take,
I think it's hilarious.
and it was
just knowing your older brother that you guys were like dying to go to a Vanilla Ice concert.
oh yeah. I mean, like I'm pretty sure I was the most stoked because it was like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles had come out, and they were like it was either the first or second movie, like Vanilla Ice. I think it was the second movie. Vanilla Ice like had a song on there or something.
Oh,
so
yeah.
like that was my jam, you know. Never mind Ice Ice Baby. It was just the hottest thing back then too, but
Yeah.
yeah, so my brother like it was I think it was a similar situation. It was like summertime, the end of the year like state fairs happen, which they get sometimes music, you know, in South Dakota that was like one of the few times that like musical guests came and did concerts and stuff like and so like he had bought this comic. He knew I love Spider-Man. He bought this comic and he was like, I'll give you this comic if you tell mom and dad you don't want to go to this concert, so that he could like take his friend or something. And I was
Did
like,
you take that bet?
and I was like, deal. I was like,
Really?
I was like, this comic's awesome. Like, I want the comic. So, and I was like, yeah.
You missed out on Vanilla Ice.
No, I went to Vanilla Ice. I think it was a different concert. I'm pretty sure I went to Vanilla Ice.
Okay.
From what I recall, I went to Vanilla Ice, and yeah, and that might have been like the year before, you know. So it was like, yeah, like he was like, I'm gonna ensure that doesn't happen again, and bribe my little brother, you know.
Fair.
It might have been like an MC Hammer count. I don't know. Who knows? Something that I was really interested in the early '90s, you know. So he had those, and then he also had he ended up having Demon #1, like first appearance of Etrigan and like Jason Blood or whatever. It's a DC supernatural character. In all honesty, I was like, oh snap, this is like exactly what I was looking for. Like coming to the expo was
stuff like that.
Like yeah, like finding that one comic that's like a first appearance, you know, not the best shape, not the worst shape, you know, and like and paying like slightly under what maybe like I would have to pay on eBay.
Yeah.
You know, sight unseen, and being able to look at it. So
and not having to pay for shipping.
And not having to pay for shipping, all of that goodness. So yeah. But then I continued spending money. Like I continued, I wasn't like, this is all I wanted to do. I've done it. Time to leave. No.
There was more things to look at. The text that came in that's like, okay, so I found some more things that were more than I said I was going to spend, was not very long after you got there. Because the girls haven't even showed up yet. Like, they had showed up.
They came in while we were talking.
Well, you had texted me before that.
Yeah, I texted before that, and then I called when I didn't feel like I was getting whatever. Or no, I called after like our little exchange where I didn't understand your text back because I hadn't read your text prior.
Right.
Yeah, so
yeah.
Well, to be fair, it's because it was graded comics, and I definitely wanted to look through, you know, other than picking up the other book, finding a sweet graded comic is another thing that was on my list to like do. Was like if there's one that strikes my fancy, which there were a few.
Well, I'm in it where I was like, the one time, like I swear to God, it happens to both of us when we're like, okay, I'm going to set a limit. I'm only going to spend this much.
Yep.
As soon as we say, like, put a limit on ourselves is when we find all these good deals that we're like, shit.
Yeah.
Like, this is more than I wanted to spend, but it's also something that I really want and is a good deal. And it always happens that way.
Yeah.
Always. If we were to go,
do that
like,
more, I guess. Be like, I'm going to limit myself to, you know.
Or we could just be like, you know what? No limit. I'm just going to go and see what I can find. And that's when you always end up finding nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm being attacked.
Are you?
Like a cat is jumping like near my elbow, which is like 3 feet off the ground here.
Yeah, she real jumpy. She got them hops. So that was our weekend. I don't know what it is about my birthdays, but it's like, they really bum me out now. And so all of last week, I was just kind of like, blah, like, you know how it gets. Usually birthdays, I love birthdays for other people. I love.
Yeah, you always spoil me.
I love.
You go out of your way to.
I love celebrating other people's birthdays, but when it comes to mine, I just am like depressed about it. You know.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but.
I mean.
And to your.
You're in the age range where, yeah, like I didn't care about birthdays either. Like.
Yeah. And you were trying to make it a big deal, and I just was not being a very willing participant in the whole thing.
Yeah.
I just wasn't having it. But I feel better now. My birthday's over. I'm 37 now, so yay me.
Oh, stamp.
Yeah.
I was trying not to say how old you were, but that's fine.
It's 37. It's whatever.
You can always cut it.
Yeah. I don't care. 37's 37.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. That was the weekend, and
yeah.
Yeah, hearing the Hendersons. I mean, so hearing the Hendersons is an obvious like Sasquatch Bigfoot movie.
Oh yeah.
Right. Like I watched it when I was a kid too. You know.
You have to tell the story about the M&Ms.
Yeah. So I'm trying to remember who I was telling, but it was like. It might have been the guy at the expo. I was like, oh, I have a great story about like hearing the Hendersons.
I love this story.
Me and my family were watching it in theater, you know, the movie theater. It's like one of those old style, like just sloped cement floor with the metal auditorium seats with some padding, you know. And we were there, I think it was like my family and maybe even like my grandma and grandpa. And, like they always bought us candy. We'd always get like our choice of a candy, and so like the scene where Harry comes over the windshield, I think.
Spoiler alert. No.
Yeah, he like I think he's on top of the car. Like they hit him, they think he's dead or whatever. They put him on the top of the car, and then like he either like puts his hands or he like or they break and he goes over like he slides forward or something.
Yeah. One
of the two, right? So it was like It's like a jump scare. It's like the PG version of a jump scare. And my older brother, pretty sure it was my older brother, like had M&Ms, and he got the jump scare got him, and he was like and the hand motion, like throwing his hands up, you know. Like people do when they're a little freaked out.
Yeah.
And the M&Ms like spilled out of the box. Like I think it was a box. Like right?
like movie theater candy. Yeah. I remember used to be in boxes all the time.
Yeah. Like everything was in a box. It wasn't even like I don't even think it had a bag inside. I think it was just
a box. Of M&Ms. Yeah.
And they hit the floor, and then we were like 2/3 of the way up, so it was just like. Ting, 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 like Plinko, all the way down to the front of the theater. And we were all, like, I remember my parents were laughing, my grandma and grandpa were laughing. Like, my older brother, I think, was upset because he had lost, like, half of his box of candy,
I think when you brought that story up last time we were there, he's like, I was just pissed I lost my M&Ms.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, it was a very good memory, you know, it's like not even related to the movie, really. No. But
you know that Harry and the Hendersons is set in Seattle, right?
I haven't seen it in so long. I guess, I assumed it was filmed in the Pacific Northwest or set in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, yep. It's set in the Pacific. It's set in Seattle.
Okay.
The family lives in Seattle, and then they have the hunting store, the sporting goods store downtown in Seattle. Good. Yep, with the dad.
See, I always felt it was fairly rural. You know?
Well,
I mean, was Seattle that big of a place, really? Like, I mean, it kind of took off in the 80s, right? Like, Microsoft was here. Like, you didn't have Amazon yet. You didn't have,
I think Seattle was still pretty
Boeing,
big. Yeah.
I think you still had Boeing because airplanes were still being made.
Yeah, and we had, like, the airport there. So I think it was still a hub, but...
Yeah.
There's like a scene in the movie that's so relatable because it's like he's trying to get out into the woods, but there's traffic and it's like backed up for days. And I'm like, yep, that's Seattle. Like, very accurate on I-5 at any given day, any given time of any given days, depending on where you're at, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It just takes one accident, people. Just one for like all the congestion. Yeah.
Let's talk about why we are how we are.
Yeah, I was going to say, did you want to segue from the Harry and the Hendersons, like Bigfoot, like why you believe in Bigfoot, or is that not really on the docket for today?
No, we can. So...
Is that one of the things?
It wasn't, but it's a good point.
Yeah.
So, I wanted to start with, I have always been interested in the paranormal and ghosts. Like, I don't.
Did you? Sorry, it's not a laughable subject, really.
No.
But yeah, yeah. Did you have? You said like from early days, right? Because like, didn't you say your house? You guys felt like your house was haunted, or
Yes, so the house that I was born, I said that really, that sounded very Canadian. Like the house that I was born in.
who said was a boot to be born in?
The house.
I threw in like a little Scottish.
I know, I was like going all over the globe.
Yeah. Yeah, so you've, I guess, been interested in the paranormal, right? Like I think you mentioned in a prior episode that like you maybe thought like your guys' house was haunted.
Yeah, so I don't remember any of this because it all happened, like it was the house that I was brought home in, but we moved out of it when I was like 2.
Oh, I thought this is the one that like you grew up like remembered mostly as a kid, not just your earliest years.
I mean, I also think that one was haunted, but
Okay.
I think I've always lived in a haunted house, so maybe
Okay.
it's not the houses that are haunted.
Yeah.
Maybe it's me.
Yeah.
I have a friend that swears it's me that's haunted, but
Yeah.
so the house that I was brought home like from the hospital in,
Okay.
there's a few different things that happened, and one of the main one that stands out to me that I've always been told was we had a neighbor next door that was like really nice. She was an older lady, she kind of very grandmotherly, I feel like.
Okay.
My mom was down talking to her one day. My parents didn't have a very good relationship.
Okay.
My dad is not a nice person. And I think that the lady next door kind of knew
Picked
that
up
a little
on it.
bit. So she was real sweet to my mom, I think. But one day she had asked my mom, like, oh, is your grandmother here? Because my great grandmother, she passed away when I was 8 or 9, I want to say. So, I remember going down to their house but she asked my mom, like, oh, did your grandmother come to see the kids or whatever? And my mom's like, no, what are you talking about? And she's like, well, I saw her sitting up in the rocking chair in the attic because there was like a rocking chair up there, right?
Okay.
And my mom said that we also used to tell her all the time that we were playing with our grandma. Like all not me, obviously. I think when I started to talk maybe, but we would always tell my mom that like we were playing with our grandma in the attic.
Oh yeah.
Like the attic area.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Maybe your older sisters were just trying to like freak out your mom a little bit because maybe they.
I don't think they're
knew.
sly enough to do that. I mean, out of the 3 of us, if anybody was going to do that, it would have been me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I understand you are the skeptic, so that's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
with my dad being super crazy too, like he was also like he would talk about ghosts and UFOs and stuff, and it always was just fascinating to me. Like, not in the way that I think it was fascinating to him, because I think that was like schizophrenia.
Yeah.
But I was always curious about it. So
Come here.
I just remember like different things. Like I think I told the story about the little boy drowning in the bathtub in my other house.
Yeah.
I used to see things in there like
Cowboy boots.
Yes, I used to see things in there all the time that would like freak me out, and I'd get super super scared at night and like always crawl into bed with my sister because I was afraid. That could also just be like childhood trauma, but whatever.
Right. You like to snuggle me.
I do like to snuggle you as long as I get to be the big spoon.
Yeah.
Yeah. I started getting curious about true crime though, because we actually had some tragedies in the family, and then we also had like things in the town that happened that just made me super curious. Like, how does that happen? Why does that happen? Right?
Right.
So my great aunt, her name was Linda, she was killed while working at a convenience, like a gas station.
Okay. Like a robbery gone wrong, or is it sketchy?
It's really in my mind it's very sketchy. Like, I don't think it's ever officially been closed, because I know there was a guy that was in a prison in Oregon that like confessed to it, but they never tried him for it, and he died before they could. So it's not like it could be technically closed, right? And it wasn't
I mean, they just mark it as super cold, I guess, right?
Yeah, and I actually have tried looking into this case. There's not a lot.
Yeah.
I know my cousin.
Not that much information.
Yeah, so my second cousin, who is actually Linda's granddaughter, knows a lot about the case.
Yeah.
So, maybe sometime in the future we could talk about it. But, so yeah, she was murdered in 1994. So I was, 9 years old?
Something like that, yeah.
8 years old. It was like January of 94.
Yeah.
So I wasn't even 9 years old at that time. And that was like, I'd never really had, I knew what dying was, right? Like, as a kid, you understand what dying is. But, a murder, I did not understand.
Yeah.
I don't think at that point, what that meant. So my mom explained to me, somebody shot her and she died. And I'm like, well, why though? Why? Why would they do that? Why do people do stuff like that, So that just got my little mind reeling, why does that happen? And then in February of 1996, an 11-year-old disappeared without a trace in our town and has never been found. The door was locked. His name was Luke Pyongdae. He was, him and his family had come from Laos. He was 11 when he disappeared on the night of February 6, 1996. His family said the door was locked and the screen was off of his window. They don't think he ran away. It was he disappeared without a trace.
Crazy.
Yeah. So that was super crazy in my mind because he was around my age. I think he was a year ahead of me in school and he disappeared. And it's just, you think about stuff like that. What if that happened to me, So that kind of got me into why does that happen, Right. And then I also found out on my father's side, my grandma, so my dad's mom.
Yeah.
From what I remember, and I remember being told this story several times, but my aunt was married to an abusive man. My aunt had left him with their kids and was trying to break into the house. He knew where everybody was in the house. He had knives shoved down into his boots. And my grandma said, if you come in here, I'm going to shoot you.
Yeah.
And
I gave him a belly full of lead.
And he came in and she shot him. Yeah. And he ended up, I think, dying of an infection in his intestines because she shot him in the stomach with a shotgun.
Yeah.
But he took off and was hiding from what I remember. And then he died. Yeah. I think I found his grave. I think he died in 89.
Okay.
So, but I haven't also been able to find anything about that.
So you figure it would be that same year, it would be he got shot at the infection, it would be all in that year, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that's who I think the person that I found on there is who I found online.
Okay.
So, yeah, and then I've been super curious about I think the biggest thing is what has to snap in a person's mind for them to be able to commit these types of crimes, or it's just so fascinating. One person can have a really bad childhood and end up being a really good person and, trying to make the world a better place. And then there's people that have perfectly normal, healthy upbringings that turn into serial killers,
Yeah.
It's what has to snap? That's always fascinated me is how the mind works and how you can actually justify or even just be able to do those types of things, because I can't even see cat puke without gagging. I definitely couldn't kill somebody because blood makes me feel like I'm gonna pass out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I mean, the more we learn about the brain, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it is just some weird pathways,
Wires
they always talk about. Well, yeah, they always talk about nurture versus nature and
right.
what matters more and stuff like that. But
I think it can be either or. I remember in a college class online that I was doing, it was a psychology class, and one of the questions was, is it nurture or nature? And I'm I think it can be both. And she's you have to pick one. I'm I don't think you can pick one because there are definitely there's cases that support both sides, right?
Yeah.
There's people that have had
It's like the assignment is pick one, pro and con it,
Yeah.
maybe.
But I couldn't do that because it's like that doesn't. There's no. I don't think you can, in my mind, from what I researched, and let's be honest, I didn't research a ton. I'm not a scientist, but I think that's why it's still a dispute, nature versus nurture, right?
Yeah.
Because you just can't say for sure, definitively, yes, this person had a bad childhood, that's why they did it. Or, yes, this person had a good childhood, that's why they never turned into a serial killer. Because it happens on both sides.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not. Turns out the world is a messy place, and there's not just like one answer for why.
Yeah, not black and white.
Happen.
So weird.
Yeah. Funny that.
Yeah. Yeah. And then like Bigfoot, like growing up in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
Always loved Bigfoot. Like I wanted it to be real. I want him to be real so bad. Like,
yeah.
Even if he's not, it's like I'm going to create like a tulpa situation where he's going to be real because I get enough people to believe in him, or enough people do believe in him.
Yeah.
Or her. So I'm curious for you, because like you were able to do, like you were on board for doing this with me. Were there any like cases or anything that happened when you were growing up as a kid that totally like blew your mind or fascinated you or anything like that? I'm kind of putting you on the spot here.
No, I mean, I'm trying to think, but I don't. Yeah, I mean, so small town South Dakota turns out like isn't all that happening. Yeah, I mean, I just feel for the most part like pretty petty. So when I was in college, a drunk college kid, was at the wrong house and was trying to break in, and it was like a father of small children, like yelling at the guy through the door, like, "This isn't your house. This isn't your house. Like, if you come through this door, like, I have a gun, you know." And the guy, like, I think he like busted through, like the door was locked, and he like busted through the door. And the dad shot him, and he died. And when I was growing up, it was like you didn't lock your door. Like, you didn't lock your door at night. Like, into the 90s, you know?
Yeah.
I guess if they had anything like a serial killer or, like, disappearances or something, that'd be real interesting. I mean, I do remember the Jacob Wetterling case, I think, right?
Oh, yeah.
I think that was, like, a Midwestern town where he was, like, missing. Like, that happened in the 80s when I was a kid, I think.
He was a,
And there were, I think they still had posters for him all through, like, when I was in high school. I don't even know if they've, like, settled that case, I guess.
I don't think he's ever been found.
Yeah.
If I'm remembering correctly. He was the paper boy. Like, he was a paper boy that got abducted, is if I'm thinking of the right person. I'm trying to see who this is. It says that there was a couple that was murdered in Brookings, South Dakota by a serial killer.
I know we had, there were definitely some incidences.
Oh, wait, Brookings, Oregon. Never mind.
And, yeah, so we don't have serial killers in South Dakota, just...
well, and you know, maybe that's also why, because, like, I grew up in the era of Ted Bundy. There was the Green River Killer. There was Robert Lee Yates. There was the Happy Face Killer who killed in and around Spokane and Oregon. Yeah. There were a lot of active serial killers in like the 70s and 80s when I was growing up. You know?
Yeah.
So I think that's also maybe why I've been so fascinated, because it was always on the news, you know?
Yeah. I remember Dahmer in the 90s. I remember when that was a thing.
Yeah.
Like, I remember hearing about him. I remember hearing when he died in prison.
Yep.
Like, I remember hearing it. I couldn't tell. It's not like 9/11, like I could tell you where I was at, you know, type of thing.
Right.
But it's like, you recall those things.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, I remember that, too, from, like, when he died in prison, I think is when I first heard about him, and then I was like, who's that, you know?
Right.
So then I asked my mom, and I think she was like, he was sicko. He's a sicko.
Yeah, there were jokes in the 90s about, like, eating people.
Like his nickname, people called him Dahmer, the people nommer.
Yeah. It was like, you know, right. Like, I'm just saying, like, that was like a thing in the 90s.
Yeah.
Humor was like, let's be pop culture referencey, but
and let's
also
not,
edgy. And
let's not think about the people that are like totally affected by this terrible thing that happened.
Yeah.
I'm still bad about that. I've been trying to be way more like, you think it's, people always make references to like serial killers and stuff like that, but I think the saddest part in all of that is the victims get so lost in the mix of the notoriety of a case. And that really, it sucks, because it's like, this person is famous because they took other people's lives. Like, those people should be known more than the serial killers are.
Yeah.
But I think, as a society, like, I find it's fascinating why people could do that. Or, again, like I've said a million times, like, what has to snap in your mind for you to be able to commit these types of acts?
Yeah.
Right? Like, yeah.
I mean, in my mind, it's like total lack of empathy, total whatever,
Sociopath, like,
Yeah.
I think sociopath is like no empathy, no like remorse, nothing like that.
Yeah, I mean, right? It's like it's an engineer with like bad social skills sometimes. It's like I feel a little detached, from people, and like I worry about that being like a thing. But like I can vividly remember when I was a kid, waiting for my dad to pick me up, like after school or after some function thing, and like I was playing on some swing sets. There was like trees nearby, and there was like a bird. And I was throwing rocks at the bird, just trying to hit the bird, like
Did
I don't
it
know,
ask you?
little kid dumb stuff, or whatever.
Did it ask you if you wanted to see its pecker?
No, it didn't. Like, I mean, it was like kind of chirping, but it also wasn't like moving. It wasn't like like I mean, I'd get close to almost hitting it, and it still wouldn't like it wouldn't it wasn't flying away.
Right.
I think it was a fairly like babyish bird, It wasn't a baby bird,
Yeah.
Like it looked like a regular bird, but and then I did finally hit it, and oh my god, I felt so bad, like when it was like so it fell out of the tree and was like laying on the ground, and I was like, this is terrible, like I felt so bad.
That hurts my heart thinking of you feeling so bad because you're just so caring and sweet. Like, I know you say that you feel like you're, sometimes detached from people, but you have such a big heart. I feel like you're very in tune to other people's emotions.
Yeah.
Or people that you're close to's emotions.
Yeah.
Like, you can pick up on that stuff.
Yeah. If I don't know you, I'm just awkward and terrible, maybe because I am trying to like feel out like how people feel generally, like I definitely consider myself like fairly empathic, as an adult and everything, but things like that. It was like, why did I do that? Like, why did I feel compelled to throw rocks at a bird? And it's kind of like, well, I had nothing better to do at the time, but then afterwards I was like, that was dumb and like wasteful and hurtful, and like,
and I think that's how kids learn too sometimes. Like, I know I have very vivid memories of specific points in my life where I did something and I'm like, afterwards I was like, why did I do that? I felt so awful because I had done it. And then I think that's how you learn not to do it. Like, that separates us from sociopath.
But I mean, right, so I think a lot of that goes towards like kids learn about death through like animals. Let's just be honest. Kids and animals is like a very interesting relationship, right? Like, so serial killers often have tortured animals. Like, when they look back in the history, you would find a number of serial killers would like torture animals, kill animals, stuff like that. Like when they were kids, teenagers, right?
That's part of, let me interject really quick.
Yeah.
So that's part of the defunct, it's not really now used, but a lot of the time back in like when profiling and things like that first started, I think, they used to have what they'd call like the McDonald triad, which was like bedwetting, starting fires, so arsonists, and killing and torturing animals.
Oh, God.
I think they've kind of gone away from that now, but I know that a lot of them still, like, one of those is still like kids that tortured animals as a child, Yeah.
And in my mind, that's a empathy issue, like that's why I bring it up. And in my mind, like, kids learn about death usually through pets, like, you know what I mean? Like, I think it's much more likely that like a kid learns what life and death are when a pet dies versus say like a grandparent or a parent or sibling, right? Like it's just much more likely that as a kid you had a pet with a fairly low lifespan, right? Like, in my mind it's real interesting, like that dynamic of like kids and animals, So, yeah. I mean, you're saying it's defunct, but like I also feel like
I think whatever,
I think they went away from using it as a profile, right? Like it's not the end all be all. Like I mean, maybe it's a signal, but I think at the same time, right? Like they also at times had like low functioning and high functioning. You know, like we watched Mindhunter, where there's like the guys that just hunted and looked for opportunity, and then you had the guys that like plan meticulously.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, both, right? Like there's a spectrum of.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Like opportunity killers and, methodical.
Yeah. I mean, when we talked about Dahmer, I think he almost taxidermied animals or would like dissolve and collect their bones and skins. Or
yeah.
something.
So his dad was like a scientist of some sort, I believe. And he would like dissolve animals into like their bones. I think he also killed animals too, not just collected. Like, he would kill animals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We haven't watched that series yet either.
No, I mean, I'm on the fence about it. Like,
yeah.
People are like, oh, it's so gross, which I'm like, that doesn't really bother me.
Yeah.
I worry that I'm going to watch it and be like, yeah, that was nothing. And then feel like I'm just a total sociopath.
No.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's kind of where, like, my fascination with true crime, and I've always been drawn to, like, the paranormal. I always felt like as a kid, I was a weirdo a little bit because I always was so fascinated by, like, ghosts and, vampires and witches, and, like, I was obsessed with those things, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever, and I always kind of felt a little bit like a outcast almost at times because, like, I was that weird kid. But then I also had some friends that also loved witches and stuff, so I kind of found my niche, And then also, like, as an adult, I realized there's so many people that grew up the exact same way that I did, feeling like they were kind of weirdos because they were fascinated by true crime and paranormal. And a lot of people were and still are. And that's why I think it's so...
Yeah.
That's why I really wanted to do this podcast because... I like talking about it, and I think, we're fucking hilarious. Like, let's just be honest.
Yeah.
All of our friends tell us we're funny, so.
Yep. I've been told I got some pretty good comedic timing. You
do.
I grew up on the Langbean side is pretty much like one-liners, like all day, every day.
The sarcasm is strong.
The sarcasm is strong. Yeah, my Uncle Bill's like the king of the one-liners, I mean, like my dad's pretty quick-witted,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So now it's like it's just something fun to do that I'm really enjoying doing it, and I love like researching cases that I've listened to and kind of getting making my own spin, giving it my own spin.
Yeah.
Because no matter how much somebody researches, there's always going to be things you can't include everything in every story because there are so many different aspects of one single case,
Yeah.
So,
and you're doing your best to like pick it out and figure out what the facts are and everything too, right? Like, I mean,
yeah, because it's hard, especially with older cases. There's a lot of conflicting information out there, so you kind of have to do your best to. Okay, this is the most commonly reported, so that's what I'm going to go with. Right, and that's why I always say, so there's lots of different things that I've read, but this is the most common one that I've read about, so that's what we're going to go with.
Yeah.
All right, guys, have a good week, and we will see you next week.
Yep. Take care.
Bye. Stay creepy.